Thank you very much, and thanks for joining us this afternoon and to talk about genetics. So I'm going to talk first about the genetic base change and explain what it is, and then what we're expecting to see come December, and then give you a little bit of when we look at the genetic base here at Holstein, the changes that are occurring. How do we interpret that information, and then how do we utilize it, and how do we update our TPI formula? And that's the sequence that we look at things. How's the population changing? And then we have our TPI formula, which is our selection index, and how should we modify that so that we continue to make breed improvement in the direction that we want to go. So the base change. Maybe the first thing is that it's kind of surprising that it's the 2015 base change that will occur in 2014. So to explain that, we had two choices. One was December and one was in April 2015. So December is much closer to the first of the year, so that was selected by industry input, and we'll be changing all bases for production, type, etc. Come December. So the way that most people define the base change is the PTAs are rolled back, and when you look at the genetic evaluations on your animals, it's a little bit of a bad news to see them come down, but actually it's a reflection of the genetic change that we've made in the population. So even though the numbers are minus and they're going down, it really is good news of increased genetic progress. So the genetic base is defined as the cows born in 2010. All of the traits will average, or most of the traits will average 0 for those cows. And if we look at the current PTAs on cows born in 2010, they're averaging 12 pounds for protein, just about a point on type, and 0.2 on daughter pregnancy rate. So they'll be rolled back or come down by those quantities. So here's the way to think about the genetic base, is that if we look at what we currently have, it's based upon the cows born in 2005. So every 5 years we roll back the genetic base. So those cows born in 2010 for PTA fat, they're averaging 17 pounds. So that's the amount of the rollback. So this is where we get the numbers to actually implement what the exact genetic base change will be. So come December, what we'll see are these numbers here, where the cows born in 2010 will now average 0, and everybody else will have 17 pounds subtracted off of their genetic evaluations. So pretty straightforward, and that's what we're expecting in December. So everyone will change by an equal amount. And the reason that we do a base change is that we want to keep our breed average pretty much at a constant or up to date, so that if you look at current milking cows, they would average 0. So if you think about breeding those cows and you want to select a bull, the bulls that are plus for different traits, they're designated as breed improvers, and you can expect genetic progress. If we didn't update our genetic base periodically, everybody would go up and up and up, and it would be very difficult to look at the genetic evaluations and determine just who really is a breed improver and who is not. So we, come December, we'll be pretty much focused on the milking cows averaging 0, and the plus animal would be a breed improver, minus would be below breed average. Now I said that most animals will change by a constant amount, but I did want to alert you to 2 additional changes that will be occurring. One is a production variance adjustment that does occur at every base time, but then USDA is also going to be implementing a new genetic model. The 2 important factors connected with that is that it's a multi-trait model, so we should be bringing in additional information and making the evaluations more accurate. But for production traits in particular, we'll have a lower heritability. Right now the heritability is at 30%, and that'll be lowered to 20%. So if you look at the standard deviation, that's the range that we have between the high animals and the low animals. It's currently 19 pounds for one standard deviation, and that's going to be 18 pounds. So we're shrinking the new values. You can think of them as being shrunk down a little bit. So if you want to predict what a high animal would be, the example that I'm using is a PTA protein of 50 pounds. If we just had a straight base change with no other changes occurring, we would expect the evaluation on that animal to be PTA protein of 38 pounds. But as I mentioned, two other things will be occurring: this production variance adjustment and also the lower heritability is being implemented. So you take the 0.96 times the 0.947 times the new value, the old value of PTA protein of 50 minus the base change, and that gives you the new expected value on a higher animal, so 35 pounds for them. So you can look at any of your animals, whether they be 60 pounds of protein or 40 pounds of protein, and use this equation to kind of give you an idea. Not too much difference between 35 and 38, but I do want to make people aware of this additional changes so that you're not thinking that all of the high animals seem to drop more than expected and there must be some reason. And there is a reason, and the reason are these two additional changes that will be occurring. So when we have a base change, it gives us the opportunity to evaluate past genetic progress and to think about where we want the breed to go. And we do actually have a vision statement for our TPI formula, what it is that we are trying to accomplish through the TPI formula. And you can read the complete vision statement that's on the screen. But I want to bring your attention to what I think is the key component of that statement, and that is it's our vision for the improvement, the future improvement of the breed, both for our domestic animals and really Holsteins worldwide. So we look at how the traits are changing, what traits are changing, how fast they're changing, whether we're going in a direction that we want to be going, and going at the rate that we want to be going. And if we need to make changes, then we would adjust the TPI formula accordingly. And I'll kind of go through some examples of what we're looking at, what kind of analysis we would make. And when I say us, this is reviewed by our Genetic Advancement Committee. Their recommendations are then brought to the full board. And then on the Genetic Advancement Committee, it's a committee that's made up of some directors, some farmers that are not board members, some representatives from AI companies, and also representatives from universities and from USDA. So it's a pretty good broad-based group that has these discussions. So if you look at the genetic improvement for production, of course we see that we're happy. Pounds of fat, pounds of protein are going up. So it's not just that we're making progress in these traits, but how much progress, what's the rate of progress, and are we happy with that, or would we like to see it a little bit faster? Now this is a graph that we don't really see too often, but I have to thank Chuck Sattler, who wrote a reply to a letter to Hoard's Dairymen, and this is I found an interesting additional piece of information, it looks at the components, whether it be percent protein or percent fat. And when we see percent protein, starting about, it was declining until the early 80s, and then from then on, percent protein went up. We have percent protein BV, and that's the breeding value. A breeding value is 2 times the PTA. So what's the genetic merit of the animals? That's increasing. Percent protein is climbing, and then also you see the impact of not only genetics but also management in the actual percent protein. So pounds of protein, pounds of fat are increasing, but also our percentages, our components. And you could easily correlate these changes with the trend in component pricing and the move towards greater and greater emphasis on sale of cheese. Here's the graph for percent fat. And again, we see in the early 80s the trend starts to change, kind of constant there for a number of years, but increasing in the most recent years for both phenotypic progress and also genetic progress. So that's nice to see. Now, if we look at somatic cell score, I think that this is a nice graph that indicates how we would analyze our genetic trends, changes that we would make, and then the impact of those changes. So if we look at somatic cell score, just a reminder that the negative values are more desirable. You want less somatic cell in the milk, indicating greater mastitis resistance. So we do see that it was increasing from the early 80s until 2000. You don't want to have that as a long-term trend, or we could say perhaps it's not a sustainable trend. So in about that time period of 2002, genetic evaluations for somatic cell score became available, and then they were also incorporated into our TPI formula. So here's a little bit of a history of our TPI formula with the percentages on different traits. So if we see in 1997, we'd have 17% on pounds of fat, 50% on pounds of protein, etc. So in 2002, we started putting a 5% emphasis on somatic cell to decrease it, and the way that we would derive that 5% is using selection index theories. 5% was the amount that was determined that that's how much that is needed to actually reverse the trend from increasing to decreasing. And if we just go back, it really worked. So this slide is very nice to show the power of having good information. This was a new trait back in the early 2000s, and when you start selecting, including it in our selection index, our TPI and net merit dollar formulas, you can see that we can actually have a positive change in our population. So if we look at daughter pregnancy rate, fertility, this is another trait that's been incorporated more recently. It has a genetic correlation of -0.35, meaning that if you select for production year after year after year, you do expect to see a decline in fertility. And I don't have to tell you that's exactly what we saw. So again, this time in 2005, and again, thanks to having a new trait available to the industry from USDA, we had daughter pregnancy rate, and we incorporated it into the TPI formula in 2005. Whoops. We see here that we now have a positive correlation between the overall total performance index and daughter pregnancy rate. So as you select for the animals that are higher in TPI, you expect to see an improvement in fertility. And that's what we do see when we look at the current genetic trends. We have not only reversed the decline in fertility, but we actually see an improvement. For overall confirmation, it's been pretty steady genetic progress, maybe a little bit increase in more recent years, but overall confirmation has been climbing. We can look at the individual linear traits to give us a better picture of, or a better description of what exactly is changing, how are we changing the conformation of our cows. So there's many desirable things that we see when we look at this graph. We see positive improvements in udders. Those are the blue bars. We see a positive improvement in feet and legs, the green bars. And then the traits that we want to pretty much hold constant, we are holding them constant. If you look at rump angle, rear leg set, so rear legs from the side view, and teat length, virtually no change at all in that time period, that 15-year time period. If you look at the body traits, we do expect the body traits to go up due to a correlated response. And amongst the body traits, we see stature making the largest increase. So that is a bit of a signal to us saying we would like to see, or I don't know if we would like to see an increase in stature, but we'd like to slow the rate of that is incurring in stature. So we do have that as an objective, and you'll see how we're trying to change the trend with the new TPI formula. So what do we want to do? We have evaluated our past performances, and now we want to modify our TPI to ensure that we'll have future success for the Holstein breed. So what we do is we look at not only the changes that are occurring in the most recent base change, but also the changes that have occurred in different time periods, the different base changes. If we look back to the year 2000, the base change for milk would have been 474 pounds. Then in 2005, it's 421 pounds. Then the most recent one will be in December, 382 pounds. So we continue to make increased progress in milk and protein, but what you see is that we're making improvement in production at a slower rate than what we did in past years. In some regards that makes sense because we're now incorporating more health traits into our TPI formula, so we've had to back off of production a little bit. But we certainly don't want to have a slowdown in our increase in production. We'd actually like to see production increasing as fast as we can possibly make it. In type, there's a little we're making good progress, but what also you see is that if you look at the different time periods, for example, the earliest one, PTAT, increased 0.72 in that 5-year period. The next base change was 0.83, and the current base change 0.99. So we've been increasing at an increasing rate. So maybe we could back off of confirmation a little bit and put that emphasis that we would save on selecting for confirmation on perhaps production or health, etc. And on pregnancy rate, we've looked at this in detail in an earlier graph, and we see that we had a negative trend early on, pretty much a neutral trend during 2000, 2005, and now that positive trend. And our interpretation there of how we would like to change our formula in the future is we definitely want to see that positive trend continue. So we now go to our new TPI formula, and what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to increase production. We want to maintain the progress that we have made in fertility, and we want to do better than what we have been doing before. So we're going to, we're putting 3% more emphasis on production, but we're putting it on feed efficiency. So our focus has changed a little bit from just pure pounds of fat, pounds of protein, to efficient production of those pounds of fat, pounds of protein. And then the fertility index, what that represents is a broader look at fertility, one that encompasses the overall reproductive process. So we're adding heifer conception rate and cow conception rate, along with the daughter pregnancy rate, to come up with an overall fertility index. And this is the same approach that USDA is taking. They're going to be incorporating heifer conception rate, cow conception rate into their net merit dollar formula. So one question that I know that people have is, well, where did you come up with these feed efficiency index? Where did the values come from? And we do need to thank the researchers at USDA. When they make their changes to net merit, they have a very extensive article there that explains the changes in the economic values that are used. And as I mentioned, Paul Van Raden serves on our Genetic Advancement Committee, and so he was helpful in working through the different economic values that are used. But that's where we get the background information for our feed efficiency index is directly from the USDA AGILE, which is Animal Genome Improvement Laboratory. So here's some of the traits or characteristics that are being considered, and it does have the income that is derived from milk volume, pounds fat, pounds protein, the salvage value. So if you have a larger animal, you would receive more salvage value from cull cow prices and larger calf values. But then you have to take into consideration that if you do have a larger cow or a higher producing cow, you're feeding her more, she's eating more, and there's more cost associated with that extra production, with that extra size, extra cost associated with the with maintenance, and then rearing costs like housing cost and the time spent as a calf up to a lactating cow would be the rearing cost. So those are all taken into consideration. Kind of the final numbers, as you would say, would be are listed here. Milk income per lactation, that's profit per lactation. The extra feed cost that goes into producing that milk are the marginal feed cost, and then the extra maintenance cost that goes into supporting a larger animal, feeding a larger animal, housing a larger animal, what we are calling maintenance cost per lactation. So we've summarized this into a little bit easier formula to be applied, but this is exactly what we have in our TPI formula. So we take the value of milk, which would be 0.0028 cents per pound of PTA milk, or $1.88 times a PTA fat pound, and $2.95 times a PTA protein. So that's the extra income that one is receiving, subtract off the extra feed and health costs, and then take into account the extra cost that goes into having a larger animal. And to give you an example of two high-ranking TPI bulls, Robust and Facebook, you can see Robust has a PTA milk of 1615, PTA fat 103, PTA protein 63, and a body size composite which is just about breed average for today, but in a month below breed average. So the milk income is just the value of the milk fat protein, $375 per lactation. The feed cost is how much this actually feed cost is feed cost plus health cost in there, and that's needs to be subtracted off. And since this animal sires offspring that are just about breed average for today, there's no deduction on maintenance costs. So we come up with a feed efficiency value of plus $217. The bull Facebook, also he has also very good at 208, and you can see a little bit higher production, so a higher milk income, higher feed cost, and then also higher maintenance cost for the body size composite. But both of these values are quite good, and if you look at any of the current high TPI bulls, and particularly the high TPI bulls come December, you'll see nice positive values for a feed efficiency index indicating that more profitability from these types of animals. So we wanted to show breeders that the formula is actually working, and what we have done is that we've taken actual cows that were born in 2010 and ran the formula, the new TPI formula on them, broke them up into a high half and a low half, and then looked at their actual performance based on the how they ranked on TPI formula. So the top half of the cows have a new TPI averaging 1,700. The lower half of the cows born in 2010 have a new TPI averaging 1,442. If we look at feed efficiency, we see that this is a within herd comparison. So the high TPI cows are producing 1,800 pounds more milk, 75 pounds more fat, 55 pounds more protein, giving us an overall value of that extra milk, $302 extra over the lower half. But it's also costing more to feed them. It's also costing a little bit more for maintenance, so they're slightly bigger. But net result, net feed efficiency, $159. So more profitable, more feed efficiency, and that's very desirable. That's what we're hoping to see. We also are incorporating a fertility index come December. As I mentioned, this the economic information came from USDA, as well as the heifer and cow conception rates. They will be incorporating it into the net merit dollar formula, as we will into our TPI. And we're pretty much using the exact same weights and economic values. We're just expressing it on a percentage basis. So our fertility index is 18% times the PTA for heifer conception rate, 18% times the cow conception rate, and 64% times the daughter pregnancy rate. Add those all together and you have your fertility index. So here's what the actual performance of the cows look like when you break them out on the TPI formula that now includes the fertility index. We see that the top half of the cows are doing much better reproductively, 9.2 days less days open, 2.3% higher pregnancy rate, and their genetic values positive for heifer conception rate, positive for cow conception rate, daughter pregnancy rate. And you can see that the 0.47 is a weighted average, and indicating that these animals should be more fertile based on their genetics, and indeed they are more fertile based upon their actual performance. For confirmation, we see again that the better TPI cows have better overall confirmation. If we look at the individual breakdowns, we see most of the differences occurring where we would like to see it in feet and legs and udders, so that's desirable and a good feature of the TPI formula. This is nice to see. As I mentioned, we are incorporating the body size composite into our efficiency measure, feed efficiency measure. We've also taken 3% off of conformation and put it over on production. And we see both of those changes has a impact on the stature of the cows. So the new TPI formula identifying the high TPI cows, those cows will be a little bit shorter in stature, and with the belief that the higher the TPI value, the more long-term progeny these animals will leave, slowing down the rate of increase in stature. Not reversing it, but slowing it down, and that's what we were trying to accomplish. So the advantage of the new TPI formula is that if you select on it, we believe that you'll be getting higher production, greater feed efficiency, more profit, and they breed back faster, settle easier, and stay pregnant. So lots of desirable things, and very much in line with our TPI vision statement of what is it that we need to do to ensure that the future of the breed is on the right track, going in the right direction. Now, another change, or maybe a change that goes along with everything else, is we will be changing the format of how we present our top TPI bulls, top TPI cows, and we will be emphasizing the new traits and categorizing them into the production, health, and conformation portion. And what I want to point out is that we will be adding the feed efficiency values. So you can see that the top one there, 217, the fertility index, and then body size composite. We always used to just list PTAT, udder composite, and feet and leg composite. But now that the body size composite is a part of feed efficiency, we want to show people what numbers are being utilized, and they can also include that in their selection decisions, have that be more upfront and easier to recognize. Now, the one other change that occurs is when you have a base change is that we have a constant value that's used in our TPI formula. Presently, that value is at 1832, and you might wonder, where the heck does that number come from? What does it do? And one of the nice things about the TPI formula is that it remains constant over time in the fact that you can look at an old animal and see what it is today and compare it to what it was 20, 30 years ago. So it's a nice way of having a value that is directly comparable over time. With all the base changes that occur, and you have numbers being rolled back, it gets confusing as far as whether animals have really changed under a new formula or haven't. So that's where the our correction factor, you could say, it's going to be raised from 1832 to 2138. And the reason why we have that number is so that you can directly compare animals over time, and you can see that it works quite well. I pulled out our red book from 1980, looked up Valiant, Glendale, and Wayne, and was happy to see the how close those numbers are 30, 35 years later. So that's also part of the TPI change, is changing the constant at the end. So those are the changes that we're expecting. The amount of rollback that we'll see is actually a good thing, indicating genetic progress. The change in our TPI formula, I think, is a good thing, because it means that we've analyzed all of the changes, looked at the trends, decided what tweaking of our selection index formulas are required to keep the breed on the right track and keep making genetic improvement and ensuring the profitability of the animals that you'll be selecting and are bringing into your herd, and hopefully improve the bottom line of all the Holstein breeders out there. So that's the update. I really am happy that you were able to join us this afternoon, and happy to take any questions at this time.
All right, thanks so much, Tom. We have had a couple questions come in as we've gone along here, so I'll just start going through a couple of those. So our first question is, the list you showed earlier of the bulls showed higher TPI than those bulls currently have. Is that because those bulls are ranked with the new formula on the old base?
Yeah, that's a good point. I did include part of the when we applied the new TPI formula, we saw that the TPIs came down a little bit just because of the change in the formula. So I applied the change to bring them back to a constant level, and then come December, these numbers will go up again due to the change in the base change values. So these numbers are slightly different because of the new formula and trying to present them on an equal base.
Our next question is, Tom, could you please explain what the production variance adjustment addresses?
I think the best way to think about that is that as production levels increase, we see the range between the high animals and the low animals spread out even more. And maybe an extreme example of that would be if you had a herd that was being severely underfed, starved, you would see the production levels drastically decline, but there still would be a range there. The genetically high animals would still be trying to eat more than the genetically low animals. There would still be a spread, but the spread would be quite small. So as we've improved our management and we get more and more milk out of the cows each year, we see that not only is the average going up, but the range in values, the spread between the high and low, the standard deviations are increasing. So USDA does put this production variance adjustment. They also call it a herd variance adjustment, and that occurs at every base change. So I thought it would be good to remind people that it does occur at the base change. So not only does the average animal decrease by the base change amount, but the high animals will tend to come down a little bit. The low animals will tend to come up a little bit.
Okay, great. So we just had another question come in. Do you predict a greater emphasis on protein in future base changes?
Well, we've pretty much have held our protein to fat ratio the same. You know, we haven't changed that part. I think part of it is that, again, as I mentioned, you know, what we're trying to do with the TPI, using it as a visionary tool in some regards. So a number of years back, we did anticipate the increased market share that just selling milk for the cheese market would have. At that time, we emphasized protein a lot more. So I think that the you know, I expect that future changes will be similar on protein and fat. Maybe the one big change will be that as we go forward, we really have not yet seen the full impact of genomics on these base change values. So I think that's what's going to cause the next base change to be quite a bit higher than the ones in the past, is the impact of genomics.
Okay, another question related to the production variance adjustment. is the current production variance adjustment similar to previous base changes, or greater or less than previously?
Yeah, it's just about right the same. So if you were to go back in time, you'd see that that 0.96 adjustment is pretty much what it was the last time. And I forget exactly when that was first implemented, but it's been a couple of base change cycles. So it's similar quantity.
All right, we got several questions coming in related to stature, so I'm going to try and summarize a couple, 3 or 4 different questions into one. So do you believe the size of the Holstein cow will be smaller in the next 5-year period with these changes?
Yeah, that's the easy one to answer. No, we don't expect them to be smaller. What it would take a fair amount of negative emphasis on stature to actually decrease the size of Holsteins in the future. So that was not our goal at this time. Our goal was to slow the rate of increase in stature. So I do see that happening, and I do see the increase in size and stature to be at a slower rate in our population than it would have been if we hadn't made any change to our TPI formula.
Okay, another question. These just keep rolling in, so thanks everyone for your interest, and feel free to keep entering those questions for Dr. Lawlor. So our next question, will the change in definition of DPR and increase in the standard deviation for DPR have an impact on fertility index and or TPI ranking?
Yeah, everything that was mentioned was correct. The DPR values are changing. The spread that one will see will be wider. So we'll see the good DPR bulls look even higher, and the low DPR bulls look even worse. So. And that part of the reason is that as I mentioned, they are implementing a new genetic evaluation, not only for the production traits, but also for the fertility traits, and they have changed the data that's being used in daughter pregnancy rate. So you will see that change, and we did know about it ahead of time and anticipate it. So the fertility index that has been developed by both USDA and Holstein has incorporated that expected change. So we can introduce the TPI formula in December, and it's already accounted for.
Okay, the next question is related to, I believe, DPR and also possibly heifer and cow conception rate. So the person asks, what does daughter conception rate numbers actually mean? If a bull is, for example, 1.5, he is 1.5, what they're questioning what those units, if they correlate to any number of days or anything.
Yeah. So the daughter pregnancy rate, that's what we've had for a while, and that's a trait that the geneticists have taken from the herd management people. And what it represents is the percentage of cows that are eligible to become pregnant do become pregnant in a 21-day period. So if we have we'll say a value of 1, a DPR of 1, that means that 1% more cows, 1% of the eligible cows will be pregnant, and that translates into 4 days less open. If you were to look at the cows on a number of days open, the daughters of the bull that's higher by +1 would have 4 days less in their days open.
All right, great. Another person asks, is there a dollar value that you can associate with +1 in the fertility index? When
when USDA looked at the different traits and you know, the genetic component of that, you know, how much change can you see in the population, and what is that change worth from a dollar value? That's how they came up with their economic values. That's the basis behind it. And then we looked at their analysis and just turned that into a percentage basis. So even though we're presenting things on a percentage basis, the reason why daughter pregnancy rate has a 64% emphasis is because it has the highest economic, it's of the highest economic importance in the overall profitability of an animal. So it's already considered, I guess I would say, is that's exactly how the formula is derived, is by taking into account what is a change in these traits worth.
Someone asks, how are heifer conception rate and cow conception rate measured?
Yeah, it's actual conception rates. So, you know, from when an animal is given the opportunity to become pregnant, you know, it's bred, did it conceive or did it not conceive? So yes, no answer. And then each of those breedings is recorded, and that's the information that's utilized. Each of those breedings has a very low heritability, so there'd be a small genetic component and a large management impact on the reproductive rate. But what makes this trait valuable is that it's multiple recordings. So if you have an animal that's bred, she becomes pregnant, that's very, very informative. But if she's bred time after time after time, that too is very informative, and that's what allows us to get a genetic evaluation with a reasonable amount of heritability. So the maximum number of breedings per lactation or per opportunity, because we have heifers also, is 7. So after that, if the heifer or cow does not conceive, then you would say that it's not just the ability to conceive, but she has some probably some infertility problems, which is a different trait.
So Tom, this is just a quick question, switching back to one of your earlier slides. And somebody just asked if the analysis that Chuck Statler did on the protein figures take into account the change to true protein from crude protein that took place in 2000.
Yes, yeah, everything was done with the true protein values. So the old values would have been already converted over to true protein.
Okay. 2 more quick questions have come in. Did you evaluate the correlation between the old and new TPI formula?
Yes, and interestingly, with all these changes that occurred, it was 0.99. So I guess that's comforting to know that high-ranking animals in the past will be high-ranking now. But I don't know exactly what's the target that you look at for amount of change. If the correlation's too low, then we'd say, gee, what the heck were we doing previously? If it's too high, then maybe you say we haven't changed the formula enough. But it is 0.99, so the values will look slightly different, but as I said, the rankings will be very familiar.
All right, great. Another question here. You mentioned a decrease in heritability of production. What happened to the heritability of type?
Presently, that has not changed, but that's something that is being reviewed. We actually have an extensive research project going on with the University of Georgia, and It's looking at not only our traditional genetic evaluations, but also our genomic evaluations. And our goal is to merge those two into what we call a single-step evaluation. And we think there's a lot of desirable features to doing that. But that's when we intend to evaluate the heritability value and adjust it at that time. So presently, there's no change in the current heritabilities, but that's something that is under review.
Okay, just had another question come in here. Again, we're getting to the end of our hour here, so please enter in any other questions. I'm asking the last one that we have on deck now. So Tom, this person would like you to prognosticate into the future just a little bit. What is the expected genetic progress for DPR, daughter pregnancy rate, in the next 10 years?
Well, as we see, the change for the last 5 years has been 0.2, and when we incorporated the additional traits, heifer conception rate, cow conception rate, we lowered productive life, the emphasis on productive life, so that we could put more emphasis on fertility. Now you see daughter pregnancy rate is 64% of that fertility index, not 100%. And what our goal was to look at or come up with a formula that would ensure that daughter pregnancy rate, the progress that we're making, is at least as good as it is currently. So if nothing changes, we would anticipate that the next 5-year period would bring us a 0.2 change also. But as I mentioned, I do see the genomic evaluations, genomic selection, allowing for greater changes in many of our traits, and DPR is certainly one that I anticipate will be making faster genetic improvement and increasing the fertility. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's close to double in the future, plus 0.4.